September 26, 1983. The world is moments away from nuclear war. The system says 5 American missiles are in the air. The Soviets have just minutes to respond. One man stands between peace and global annihilation, and he decides to do nothing. But what if he was wrong?
3, 2, 1.
The Cold War is at its boiling point. The US and the Soviet Union are locked in a silent standoff, each one with enough nuclear firepower to end human civilization many times over. Trust? Non-existent. Diplomacy? Frozen. Any mistake could be fatal. In a top-secret Soviet bunker just outside Moscow, a man clocks in for his night shift. His name is Stanislav Petrov, a lieutenant colonel and the commander of the Soviet early warning system. He has one job. If the system detects incoming missiles, he must immediately notify the Kremlin. And the Kremlin will launch back. For hours, the screens glow silently, just like any other shift. Then, at 12:15 a.m., an alarm pierces the silence. One missile detected, launched from the United States. Seconds later, another, then a third, a fourth, a fifth. The computer screams, "High probability of nuclear attack." Protocol says Petrov must report it immediately. There is no time to think, no room for doubt. But Petrov hesitates. Everything in his training tells him to sound the alarm. The entire Soviet defense system is built on this moment. One alert, and thousands of nuclear warheads will launch within minutes. But something doesn't feel right. Why would the Americans start a war with just 5 missiles? Petrov mutters under his breath. He checks the radar. Nothing. He checks the satellite visuals. Still nothing. Only the computer insists. Attack underway. But Petrov doesn't trust the computer. He spent years designing, debugging, and analyzing these systems. He knows what they can do and what they can't. And in this moment, instinct matters more than protocol. He picks up the phone and reports it as a false alarm. The next 17 minutes feel like eternity. If he was wrong, missiles will begin raining down any second now. Every second ticks louder than the last. No explosions, no shock waves, no war. He was right. It was a glitch. A rare cosmic alignment had tricked the satellite sensors. Sunlight reflecting off high-altitude clouds fooled the system into detecting phantom missiles. The system nearly started World War III. But one man didn't follow the machine. You'd think a man who prevented nuclear war would be celebrated, but in the Soviet Union, silence was safer than praise. Petrov was scolded for not logging the incident fast enough. No medals, no press, no promotion, just a reprimand, and eventually, retirement. He returned to a quiet life in a modest Moscow suburb. Nobody knew the truth. Not his wife, not his children, not even his neighbors. Years passed. The Soviet Union collapsed. And then the truth emerged. An article, a documentary, a German man named Karl who invited him to speak abroad. Suddenly, Stanislav Petrov became the man who saved the world. He was honored by the UN, thanked by presidents, celebrated by millions. But Petrov never thought of himself as a hero. In his words, "I was just doing my job. The world should be glad it was me, and not someone else." Stanislav Petrov died in 2017, quietly, alone. No parades, no headlines. Even his gravestone doesn't mention what he did. But what he reminds us is clear. One person, one instinct, one choice can change everything. In a world driven by machines, fear, and power, sometimes the only thing that saves us is humanity. That night, when sirens screamed and the screens warned of nuclear war, Petrov didn't follow protocol. He didn't obey blindly. He paused. And in that pause, the world was saved. He was never celebrated as a hero in his homeland, but across the world, people began to take notice. In 2004 and again in 2006, he received the World Citizen Award. Later that year, he stood at the United Nations, honored not for action, but for choosing inaction when it mattered most. In 2012, he was awarded the German Media Prize, and in 2013, the Dresden Peace Prize. Then, a year after his death, he was posthumously honored with the Future of Life Award in 2018. It wasn't wealth or medals that defined him. It was restraint. It was courage. It was choosing to think when others would have simply obeyed. No statue tells his story. No holiday carries his name. But today you know who he was. And maybe that's enough, because the man who saved the world did it quietly, without a missile, without a speech, without ever being told thank you. Sometimes, history is written not by those who act, but by those who refuse to, who choose reason over reaction, who understand that true strength is knowing when not to strike. Stanislav Petrov didn't save the world with power. He saved it with doubt. And sometimes, doubt is exactly what humanity needs. So today, we remember the man who paused while the world was seconds from ending. To Stanislav Petrov, thank you for choosing calm over chaos, for listening to your instincts when the world demanded obedience, for giving humanity one more chance. You may not have wanted to be called a hero, but to us, you always will be. Rest in peace, guardian of the quietest victory in history.